while some in the right wing continue to claim that the FBI on January 6th had infiltrated Capitol rioters to make Trump supporters look bad, or even led the riot, new reporting shows what they actually do, which is to say that they infiltrate the left, specifically when it comes to racial justice protests. So now, according to The Intercept, who spoke with activists at Colorado Springs, Colorado, a woman with pink hair, or dare I say,
pink-haired communist,
who claimed to be a left-wing activist interested in volunteering for a group that does racial justice protests, was actually an undercover police officer recruited by the FBI. Here are the details. So now, according to Samantha Christensen, co-founder of the Chinook Center, this is, again, a center, left-wing activism, including, people that have organized different marches for things like affordable living situations and racial justice, along with others, had spoke to the Intercept about a woman that they believed was named Chelsea. She, was the pink-haired alleged sex worker. So now look, and by the way, that was part of her story. Oh, I'm a left-winger, I'm a sex worker, and so I want to volunteer. Now, of course, the people at Chinook Center were like, okay, we don't care what you do. We don't care if you're a sex worker. We're pro-sex worker here. We don't care, like the only thing that we care about is you want to do better for the community. You want to protest with us. You want to march with us. You want to volunteer. Totally fine. We're not going to question it. You want to do the right thing? Totally good. So now, according to John Christensen, Samantha's husband and another co-founder of the Chinook Center, quote, she had implied over the course of getting to know her that she was a sex worker. I think somebody else had told me that, and I was just like, oh, okay, that makes sense, said Autumn Carter Wallace, an activist in Colorado Springs. I never questioned it. So now it turns out that Chelsea's identity was fake. Her real name, April Rogers. April Rogers is a detective at the Colorado Springs Police Department who had been enlisted by the FBI to infiltrate and spy on racial justice groups during the summer of 2020. The work of Rogers, or Chelsea, is a direct offshoot of the FBI's summer of 2020 investigation in Denver, where a paid FBI informant named Mickey Windecker had also infiltrated and rose to a leadership role within the racial justice movement in that area, and had tried to encourage activists to become violent. So now right there, think about this, okay? So a Fed comes in to this group, infiltrates, paid informant, okay, and then tries to get people to be violent. Now the right wing says that was Ray Epps during January 6th. So there's no evidence of that. And by the way, Epps is now suing, specifically, I believe, Tucker Carlson. We don't have any evidence, though, that Epps was a Fed. And yet here, she basically admitted, yeah, I'm a Fed. In court. She admitted it. And Windecker also has shown in documentation to have been a federal informant. So this is where the real infiltration is happening. This is the real Fedception, okay? It ain't happening on the right. It's happening on the left. So keep that in mind. Now, Windecker had provided information to the FBI about an activist who attended demonstrations in both Denver and Colorado Springs, prompting federal agents to launch an investigation into the smaller Colorado city. As the FBI's Colorado Springs investigation reveals, Denver wasn't the only city where federal agents had infiltrated racial justice groups in that summer. In fact, working through the Joint Terrorism Task Force, terrorism, a partnership with local police, the FBI assembled files on local activists using information that was secretly gathered by Chelsea or Rogers. And of course, during her time inside of the group, she had even attempted to entrap 2 activists in a gun running conspiracy. Wow. So now, her tactics had mirrored those of Windecker, who had tried to entrap 2 Denver racial activists in crimes, including an FBI engineered plot to attempt to assassinate Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser. That, of course, went nowhere because these activists are like, nah, dog. No, we're not into that. We're just out here to try to help Black people and the unhoused. What are you doing? No, no, we don't want this to do. No, we don't want to do violence. Now, Rogers had been basically part of that group and had spied on them for at least a year. Now, the FBI investigation in Colorado Springs also showed that federal law enforcement had embarked on, again, broad and until now secret strategy to spy on racial justice groups and try to entrap them in crimes. So now we also learned that the FBI targeting of racial justice activists wasn't just limited to Denver. It was, of course, all over. And, of course, Senator Ron Wyden had told The Intercept, once he had found out that this was going on, that it's a clear abuse of authority for the FBI to use undercover agents, informants, and local law enforcement to spy on and entrap people engaged in peaceful First Amendment protected activities without any evidence of criminal activity or violent intent. So I think that's very, very important. That is key right there, especially when you compare it to what happened on January 6th. So for days, even longer, before January 6th, there was monitoring of extremist language and plans to possibly perpetrate violence on the day of the certification of the election. Okay? Those warnings were largely ignored. And that's why they did not properly prepare for that. Now, at the same time, where they were seeing all these threats from the far right, extremists, they instead were looking at peaceful protesters and social justice activists and advocates who were not talking about violence, but were trying to entrap them in schemes anyway. By the way, one of the examples of the entrapment attempts involved illegal weapons, including grenades. In fact, FBI agents in Colorado Springs confirmed the meetings between Rogers and at least 2 different activists had occurred, although the possibility of a sexual encounter appeared to be implicit in the invitations. You know, that's part of her, I guess, cover as, oh, I'm telling everybody, oh, I'm a sex worker. I'm a sex worker. And then implicitly inviting them to entrap them in weapons deals. Now, the meetings, of course, took unexpected turns. In fact, one of the activists lured to a meeting with Rogers described walking into an apartment and finding 2 guys sitting there with her. Now, that particular activist asked not to be identified because he had feared that being publicly associated with an FBI investigation could cost him his job. Wish it worked that way on powerful people, but it doesn't. Now, the activist was basically asked by Rogers if he could find her an illegal gun to buy. The activist said, quote, "I'm not going to sell one to you illegally." The activist, a firearms enthusiast, told Rogers and her 2 companions. He then left. Rogers then invited over a second man, a man identified as Gabriel Palchik, who said that she introduced him to 2 men named Mike and Omar, who claimed that they were running guns. So, no ambiguity there. Like, oh yeah, by the way, I have grenades and AK-47s. I can smuggle weapons for you. Now Palchik's like, oh, okay, but no, I really don't want guns. Not really interested in that. Keep that to yourself. That said, oh, by the way, they claimed to have things like AK-47s and grenades and was willing to sell. Palchik said, I'm not interested. But he said, look, okay, I kind of hung around them a little bit. I mean, they were nice. They kept buying me like food and drinks and cigars, and they would get me drunk. In fact, Palchik says there's a few times where they were obviously pumping drinks into me. Saying, for example, quote, oh yeah, do you want another double shot of that 16-year-old scotch? Why not? And then, of course, afterwards, like, oh yeah, now that you're drunk, you want to buy some guns? Illegal guns? No, not really. Now, after a while, he's like, yeah, these guys, I'm getting an off feeling about them. So he decided to stop returning their calls and texts. Now, Palchik obviously hadn't been charged with any crimes because he didn't commit any crimes. He wasn't trying to buy illegal weapons. So, I mean, yeah. Now, agents ended up visiting his home anyway. And that's, by the way, he actually agreed to meet with agents afterwards, after the visit to his home where they found nothing. And they met with him at the FBI's office in Colorado Springs. That's on the condition of that he would be allowed to record their conversation. And in that conversation, the agents admitted that, yeah, we've been watching you for a while, and we've been trying to entrap you. Good job. Good job not being entrapped. Mike and Omar, according to the agent, were feds. And here's what the quote was. You felt that there was a gun running conspiracy we were trying to throw at you, which those were, in fact, undercovers, said Brandon Kimball, the FBI agent, during the recorded conversation. He also said, they're basically in town to do a meeting with Gabe to sell him hand grenades. Palchik said they were basically recounted for me that they were looking into me, because I allegedly inquired about acquiring weapons. And they said that, they have recordings of all the conversations I had with the undercovers, which obviously, yeah. But he hasn't been charged because he didn't do anything wrong because he wasn't buying illegal weapons. So, look, there's a lot more involved in this story. I would definitely advise you to go and read the whole accounting. And there will be a link to that story to The Intercept in the description of the video. But let me just note that this is why I say that the left cannot trust the FBI. They just can't. They're not our friends. I know the Mueller she wrote. It's gonna say, "Oh no, the FBI is fantastic." It's great. It's great. No, the FBI has a history of targeting the left. The left. They're not going after conservatives. You have to understand that. They're not doing the infiltration of conservative groups, generally. Everything the right has been saying about, for example, the January 6th pro-Trump rioter, protesters, rioters, Ray-Epps, and one of the reasons that a lot of conservatives actually ignored, even Trump supporters, Trump fans, ignored Trump's call to go and protest his alleged arrest, which of course did not happen. It's because they were all afraid. Oh, it's the feds. They're going to do this. No, they're not doing it to you. They're doing it to the left. There's no evidence that they did this to the right. And it's all weirdo projection. And by the way, the same thing, that I want to add, or one thing that I want to add, is look, these people on the right, a lot of them love it when law enforcement stops on housing rights advocates. It's true. They love it when the law enforcement brutalizes and entraps innocent people. As long as they're on the left. As long as they're, we got to own the libs. We got to own the libs. But when their own people try to overturn an election, they don't take any responsibility for some of their own that obviously believed in the big lie and tried to disrupt the certification of an election. They say, oh, no. It's the FBI, it's the feds. And by the way, it's the left. No, nobody's been targeted more by the FBI and law enforcement than the left. It is remarkable how these people continue to turn reality on its head to avoid any sort of accountability and to suit their own agenda.